from my own personal history back in the west of Ireland, there was one Norman house. As I told you, the Normans tended not to have penetrated past that line between, say, Galway and Sligo. A little buckle in there, they did go in a little further in their Cong and so on. But generally, they didn't go past those lakes. But east of there, they were very powerful. And there was one family which, in many ways, I think, personifies this convergence of the Normans and the Irish, and that was the McDermott family in North Roscommon, and the McDermott Row. And when I was a kid growing up, there was an eccentric guy that used to come into town on his bicycle, and he was the Lord of Coolavin, the Prince of Coolavin rather. He was the Prince of Coolavin, and he was honoured and respected and acknowledged with that title. And I used to think it was a joke. I didn't, as a kid. The guy's like talks to himself. He's an idiot. Because he had a problem. And people would, they would literally honour this man, and he would return, and so on. It was the strangest thing. And my mother used to tell me that he was of the old nobility, and they're an extraordinary family. And if you ever want to really study this thing, just see if you can find anything on the McDermotts, the McDermott Row. And if you're ever back there, it's the last remaining true blood Irish mixed Norman Gaelic family in Ireland today that still owns its land, that's still there. And the McDermott that you read about in the 1916 and later, that's where he was from. He was from the McDermott. The McDermotts are an extraordinary family, and they're a classic example of where the Normans came in and they enhanced the existing aristocracy or the system that was there rather than debilitated it. And they built some very nice castles. And you've heard me talk before about the O'Garas and how they were the ones who financed the Michael O'Clery, who wrote the Annals of the Four Masters, McDermotts, part of the same family. And that castle is still there, it's in ruins. And I always paid like a religious visit when I'm there every time, and it was the last day the last time I was there in May, that was where I spent my last day, was down there in McDermott Castle. There's just something about it.
Where is that?
It's between Ballahadreen and Boyle. It's north of Ballahadreen. And you'd never find it in a million years unless you ask somebody to direct you to it, because it's up Boreen off another Boreen, on the side of a hill. But for those who know about it, it's a very, very interesting place, very, very interesting place. And when I was there, I had just come up from Portugal, and I had been looking and studying, not studying, but absorbing some of the old Moorish castles along the Algarve. And I noticed for the first time a lot of the actual military ideas in that castle, which I was not aware of before. Now I'm familiar with Norman castles, but I recognized some of the method, the way that, I don't know if you know much about Moorish castles, but they have this thing where you have a big door here, and then you have an entry place, and there's a little trap in the middle. It's kind of like a security place. What the hell do they call it? There's a name for it in Pardon? No.
Kind of the opposite of a poet.
Yes, he's busy right now.
There's a term for it.
No, there is a name for it. You know what I'm talking about? You know? Huh? What does he call it? And it's very distinctive. Now you won't see. It's not.
Go in a place like this if you heard the name of it.
But it's a beautiful name. It's a very, there's a real name. But they stick out outside. Huh?
Killing something.
Pardon?
Is it killing something? Or?
It's very Spanish.
You have somewhere you can see from above it, right?
Oh yeah. Well, there's 4 towers, but it looks like it's an ornate thing. Pardon?
Murder hole?
Pardon?
Murder. Oh.
No.
Those are the things that you look down at it from.
No, this is like straight out of Castilian, Granada type thing. It's very, very Moorish and very Spanish. But the idea is totally foreign in Northern Europe. And here it was in the Ugarga. I had never really appreciated it before. So I was amazed. Now it was a smaller version of it, but nevertheless very clear. So that surprised me. So you can see the mixture of influences that must have been going on there. But the McDermotts, anyway, as I said, are very fascinating. And they survived throughout the whole turbulent periods. They survived all of that and survived intact. It's just amazing. And politically, obviously, they were very astute because they were able to maybe get the eldest son to go Protestant, so he held them, the rest of them were Catholic, or maybe they took their turns being Protestant or something. I don't know. See how they, but they did it. And I'll read you a little. Well, let's see. I haven't read this, so I don't know what they've said here. But anyway, the McDermott kings of Moy Lurg retained their status and kingdom during this era, and were frequently powerful kingmakers right up to the death of Tig McDermott in 1585, last de facto king of Moy Lurg. Their cousins, the McDonagh of Tir Alia, found their fortunes bound with the O'Connell Roe and so on. Okay, I better not go into it. But managed to flourish until repeated raids by O'Donnell in the early 1500s. But they do mention O'Hara's and O'Gara's, although Tira, O'Hara, O'Gara, and O'Madden either survived in isolation or were vassals for greater men. But if you ever get a book, or if you ever see anything on the McDermott family, read it. It will be quite fascinating. And they played an important role right down to... and the house is still there. And my sister Nancy is very good friends with the woman who lives there on her own in this huge house. And she is in her late 80s, maybe even 90s, I don't know. Drives into town every day, does her shopping, chases after cattle, does everything. And I think she's got some family in England or in Dublin or something like that. And she's a real feisty woman. And Nancy tells me about her so much, and I've driven down and talked to her a few times. And if you want to talk to her, you'll talk to her, but you're doing whatever she's doing.
Oh, right.
You go.
If you can keep up with
Yeah, she's got a pair of Wellingtons, and she's out, whatever it is, she's on a mission she's doing.
I knew you would say that.
That's great.
Yeah, and an incredibly interesting woman. And you kind of like go, Jesus, like, it's like you're dreaming this, that there's a real person going back, and her husband was, I don't know, he served, they're still very, very Irish, but also part of the British Empire system, but incredibly proud of their Irishness. And that's something that we don't really understand as an Irish people. We only understand the Irish that were out, as we say, that were out in the IRA war and so on. We don't understand some of this, but and that goes all the way back to that marriage between the Normans and the old Irish.